Okay.
Okay. All right. Welcome all to the next version of the Dallas Votes presented by the League of Women Voters. We're waiting a few more minutes for everyone to get in. We had a few that signed up for online and some that signed up for in person. So this is a hybrid recording that we're doing, but if you do not wish to have your face show up, please make sure that you are using the turning off your video on your screen. We also have you muted, so until we ask for questions, please let us do that so that we can hear what our speaker is saying this afternoon. This is the second in our series for people to learn more about the voting system and how the voting process and how it is done. We do have some extra speakers, but they're not in the room right now. So I'm Kathy Berry. I work with the Dallas Public Library, and today we have Barbara Larkin, and she's going to introduce herself. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat for the moment. And when we ask for any questions and you are able to, you can unmute yourself. But until then, please stay muted. Barbara.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Larkin, and I am the VP of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters of Dallas. And our motto is empowering voters and defending democracy. So we are always interested in helping people and educating people on how to go figure out how to go vote and logistically how to do it and how to get ready to do it. And so that's some of the things we'll be talking about today. The president of the League of Women Voters of Dallas is down there at the library. So if anyone is actually down there, she's right now she's doing an interview, but then she's going to be in the room in a little bit. So you can also personally ask her questions when she gets there. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. I can't quite see.
Okay, Barbara, we do have your presentation.
Did that work?
Yes, sure did.
The great mystery of sharing my screen. Okay, so what I called this presentation is a guide to voting in May, because as we'll talk about, there are 2 elections in May. On a normal year, there's maybe 2 elections in a normal year, and this particular year, 2022, actually has 5 different times that you can go vote, which is a little unusual. So we're trying to be clear about that for everyone, that there's actually 2 elections in May and what's going on with that. So before I get to that, I always like to talk about why vote, why people vote, why they don't vote, and just a little bit of background on that. So we spend a lot of time out at the community colleges and talking to young people. And sometimes we hear people say, oh, you know, I don't vote for a variety of reasons, because it's confusing is one. But another one that we talk to people about is it doesn't occur to people that whether they vote or not, they are still living in a representative democracy and they still have representatives. So if you're here and you're listening to me, you probably are someone who votes generally. But if you have people in your life that don't, we are always looking for people to help us with this sort of general outreach to people, to have people understand that they currently have representatives, whether they vote or not. And that, you know, if they don't vote, someone else is picking their representatives for them. And it was sometimes when we're talking to young people and they realize that, they think, okay, now I understand what you're saying, that I have representatives, they're out there. I should go see what they're doing and what they think and how that relates to what I think. And so it's sort of a powerful logic line to get people to think about being a voter. Texas currently has some of the lowest voting rates in the country. In 2018, 8 million Texans voted. In 2020, 11 million Texans voted. There are 17 million registered voters in Texas. There are actually 19 million that could be registered. So, 11 million people thought, oh, that was so good. But, when you compare that to the 19 million that could have, that's still 8 million people that didn't get it done. So, we, the League of Women Voters, would like more people voting. And it is still that the voters are weighted to older people. 76% of the registered voters in the age group of 65 to 74 voted in that 2020 election, but only 53% of people in 18 to 29. So if you are a younger person or younger people, we need to encourage them and enable them to vote. So what's going on in May? So the first election is Saturday, May 7th. That is currently going on right now, it turns out. Early voting is Monday, April 25th through Tuesday, May 3rd. So that's a week from today, early voting ends. Early voting started yesterday. What this Saturday, May 7th election is nonpartisan city races not in Dallas. Dallas isn't until next year, but a variety of other cities around Dallas have city council races. There are school board races all around Dallas area. There are the Dallas College trustees. 3 of the different districts are running, 1, 2, and 3, all have vibrant, lots of candidates and a lot going on in the Dallas College trustee race. And then there are 2 constitutional amendments that everyone in the state has, which I'll explain more about in a minute. And then the second election in May is Tuesday, May 24th. That is the runoff to the Republican and Democratic primaries that happened on March 1st. And the runoff will be determining the winners of the runoff will then go to the November election. And those are partisan races. So that's either Republican runoff or a Democratic runoff. And that is more like US Congress races, Texas Senate and House. The county commissioners will be on the ballot on that Tuesday, May 24th. There are certain congressional races in the Dallas area that are exciting. If you happen to live in US Congressional District 30, where Eddie Bernice Johnson has retired, there is a runoff in both the Republican primary and the Democratic primary. So there's some excitement in US 30. A lot of people are interested in that race. The way you get into a runoff is during the March primary, if you didn't get 50% of the vote, that's how the law reads. You have to get 50% of the vote to not go to a runoff. If you didn't get 50%, then the top 2 vote getters go to the runoff. So that's determined how that is, who's in the runoff. The other thing is that the way if you voted let's say you voted in the March primary, in the Republican primary, the rules state that if you vote in the runoff, you have to also vote in the Republican primary runoff. If you voted in the Democratic primary in March 1st, then to go to the runoff, you have to vote in the Democratic primary runoff. I call it staying in your lane just for that cycle. Then once you go to November, it's all fair game. You're free because the Democrats and the winning Democrat and the winning Republican run against each other. So there's no limits there. Now, if you didn't vote in the March 1st primary because you were busy or you missed it, you can vote in either runoff race. You have your choice. So it's just that if you voted in one of the party primaries, you have to vote in the same party's runoff. Okay, so I've gotten that question a lot lately. Okay, so those are the big 2 elections in May. The constitutional amendments. Okay, so on this May 7th, the election we're in right now, excuse me, there are 2 constitutional amendments that Texas has a system where we amend the Constitution frequently. And so the first Proposition 1 is a proposition that lowers the property taxes for the elderly and disabled homeowners. So, and then the second proposition is lowers homeowners' school property tax by increasing the market value that they can deduct from 25,000 to 40,000. Those are the two main propositions. There are videos on the Legal Women Voters of Texas website, which I highly recommend. And that website is www.lwvtx.org. So as soon as you go in there, right on their front page, they've got videos that explain these constitutional amendments. There are also detailed write-ups on that website. I couldn't do it justice here. It's quite a few pages, but if you are interested in those amendments, I recommend the videos are only 1 minute long each, so that's handy. If you are interested in the detail, you can go to that website and find the detail too. So something that I always like to talk about, because I spend a lot of time talking to new voters and people that are new to the process. And so this is something that I have found is an important part of understanding voting, is that voting has a process. So sometimes, for example, when I'm talking to young people, they think that older people just have all this information in their brain and that we just know who's on our ballot just without looking it up. So I often say, no, even if you're older, you still go look up who's on your ballot, and then you do a little research. That's just part of the process of voting. So I just want people to know that in Texas, there's a process. And the first step is registering to vote. I spent a lot of time on Sunday talking to people that had moved to Texas, and they did not know necessarily that you have to register to vote, because in a lot of states, you actually can just show up and register the same day. In Texas, you register to vote, and you have to wait 30 days before you can actually go vote from when you registered. So the first step is registering to vote. The second step is checking if you're registered. That is an important step. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Then the third step is researching who currently represents you. That's very important, just because then you're sort of in the loop on who is your current U.S. congressperson. That's become especially interesting because there was redistricting, because we just went through the 10-year census. And so a lot of people are in new districts and actually have a new U.S. congressperson than they had before. And so we're very much want people to go research who are your representatives, because it might have changed. And then researching who will be on your ballot is always a very important step. I think it's the one that doesn't get enough, attention, is going and looking, okay, who's on my ballot, so that when you don't just show up to vote, you're surprised. And I've worked many elections as a clerk, as a polling clerk, and sometimes people come in and they just knew who was going to be sort of at the top of the ballot, and then they just vote for one thing, and then they turn right back around and leave. And I've had people come to me and say, gosh, I had no idea there was all these other people on the ballot. I would have, if I'd paid attention, I would have voted for more than just the one of the 20 or 30 roles that might be on the ballot. So it is, all those other roles are important. Those people represent you too. And we generally want people to research, all the roles on their ballot, vote for as many as you feel comfortable voting for. And then the logistics come into play, where and when you want to vote, making a plan to vote, and either voting by mail or in person. So just a few more about these steps. Checking if you're registered. This has become more important because the county elections administrators are responsible to make sure that their voter rolls are updated. If you move, you could, and you were voting at your old address, you could actually be voting for the wrong U.S. congressperson. You might have just crossed district lines and be voting for the wrong role. So the county elections people take very seriously getting their voter rolls accurate, and they really want to know where you live. They want to make sure that you are actually voting from the correct address, because they want to make sure you're voting for the right representatives, which makes sense. So one of the things that they do is periodically send out letters on a random basis and say, hey, do you still live in this address? And sometimes people don't see those letters, or they think they're junk mail and they don't respond. And so and what happens is then you can get your voter status put into what's called suspense. And that means that you have to resolve that in terms of your voter registration. So we just sort of want people to check if they're registered. There's two ways to do this. If you live, well, there's multiple ways, but if you live in Dallas County, we recommend DallasCountyVotes.org, which is the Dallas County elections website, which I sort of highly recommend for all kinds of things. It has an area, it's called Voter Lookup, and you just put in your first name, your last name, and your birthday, and up comes your sort of voter status, and it'll say your name, you're active. And there's two really important things, because once you look yourself up in Dallas County Votes, you actually have a PDF, a live link to what's going to be on the ballot on the next election. And you also have a link to a list of all your representatives. So it's very informative. And a lot of people, once they know that's available, they're like, okay, now I understand. Now I can vote. I can find what's going to be on my ballot. I can find out who my current representatives are. It really helps people a lot. If you don't live in Dallas County, the equivalent for the state of Texas is votetexas.gov. And they have a section called Am I Registered? So you can do that there. Let's see. That's the meat of that. If you happen to not be registered, there are mostly people in Texas. There's the way the law is written, the process has to be finished in a paper form, paper with a real pen signature. So most people like me are out registering voters on street corners, and often libraries sometimes can register people in different offices. You can always go to Dallas County Votes, which is the elections website, and register right in their office. It takes 2 minutes. But if you don't want to do that, you can start the process online at a website called registertovote.org. You put in your information in registertovote.org, and it prints it and mails it to you, and then you mail it back to the county elections. It's actually a little easier than it sounds. It's a pretty good website, so we recommend that. Actually, before I move on, I should mention that in the last legislative cycle, they added a function that we were happy about, which is that if you have moved within Texas and you were already registered to vote and you just want to update your address, if you go back to that votetexas.gov, that in that section, there is a place where you can update your address. And that is new. It did not used to be allowed that you could update your address online, and you can do that now in Texas. So we were supportive of that, because that definitely makes people's lives easier. So there are paper forms that are, always at voter registration drives and all kinds of places, at the county elections website. If you decide you just want to register in with a green or a white form, that's totally fine. Okay, moving on to getting ready to vote. I had mentioned once you are registered, you can look up yourself in the county website and go to the link where it says view my sample ballot and see your ballot. And then the next step, once you know who is on your ballot, is understanding a little bit about those candidates. And so the League of Women Voters of the United States, there's actually a US League, a Texas League, and a Dallas League. The league is sort of structured like the government. And we have a website called vote411.org that is a candidate information website. And the way it works is that the League of Women Voters of the US writes questions for federal candidates, and the League of Women Voters of Texas writes questions for the state candidates. And people like me and Diane, who's in the room, we write questions for the local candidates. And everybody, we write all the questions that we think are relevant, and we send them to all the candidates, and we collect their answers, and then we just we don't change anything. We just post it so people can read the answers to questions that candidates have answered. It's an important process. We put it on the Vote 411 digital. It's always on the Vote 411 digital guide, we call it. And when you go into vote411.org and you put in your address, it will bring up your candidates and all the answers they've answered to various questions. It's also it has research on propositions and amendments, pros and cons to propositions. So it's a good place to go get information. It's strictly nonpartisan. We try to make it as unbiased as we can. We just write the questions and let people answer them. So we highly recommend it. I always use it. You can't actually, you can't look it up when you're in the polling location because you're not allowed to look at your phone in a polling location. So when I do it, if I do my research on Vote 411, I print it and then I carry it into the polling location. In this current May 7th election, you probably don't have I only have 3 things on my ballot. Most people only have a few things, but like the March 1 primary was really long. I probably had 70 different things to vote on. In situations like that, I print out what I'm bringing into the polls. In terms of the logistics, Dallas County Votes has a list of polling locations and hours. We always think it's good to make a plan for where and when to vote. Dallas County has what's called vote centers, which means that you can vote at any of the locations in the county you live in throughout the whole voting period, both early voting and election day. And I'm a big fan of vote centers. When they first came out, right out of the box, about 50% of the people chose to not vote in their local, the precinct location that was right by their house. They preferred to vote while they were out running errands or where they were at the office or when they were somewhere else. And so it's become, now people are used to vote centers where you can vote anywhere. And I think that it's, to me, it's a really good, just makes life simpler to be able to vote anywhere. You also, if you have a car, you can, if you go to a vote center and seems to have a long line, you can go to a different one. Which is another reason to vote early. There's a lot of reasons to vote early, but one is that, you can, you have time. Both Tarrant and Collin County, by the way, have vote centers. So if you happen to live in Tarrant County, you can vote at any of the locations in Tarrant. If you live in Collin, you can vote at any of the locations in Collin. Denton is actually different. They have vote centers for early voting, but they actually go to precinct voting on election day. So it's different in different counties around Texas. I think it's a good thing that in the North Dallas area, in the Dallas area, that we have vote centers. Okay, so voting in person, there's many reasons to vote in person, vote early in person. One of the reasons I would say to vote in person is that once if you have an issue come up, you actually have time to go resolve it. If for some reason you did not bring your license or something was wrong in the poll book when you were trying to check in, if you've early voted, you can actually go home, get something that you didn't get some sort of different extra form of ID and go back. When you vote at 6:45 p.m. on election day, it's hard to turn around, go back and go get what you need. So we just want people to be able to have a more relaxed experience. So we're big fans of early voting. If you have a driver's license or a state ID, we recommend you bring that. There's a barcode on the back of your driver's license that is connected to your voter ID file. So when you go vote, if you happen to have a driver's license or a Texas ID, you just hand that to them and they scan it with their barcode and bing, you just come right up. So it eliminates a lot of errors, because if you don't have that, if you check in with one of the other IDs, which you can do, it's a passport, a gun license, a military ID that has a photo, there's an election ID certificate, and a thing called a US citizenship certificate. Those are all valid forms, but they are not like the person who checks you in has to type in your name. And if they do it wrong, there is some, there's possible error that could happen. So we're big fans of getting people, if you have a driver's license or a Texas state ID, bring it to the polls. Also bring your research. And then if you have any issues, there is a nonpartisan service called, it's an election protection service called, and they have a phone number, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. And that is staffed by lawyers who are familiar with the voting laws. And if you have an issue, you're not allowed to call while you're standing in the polls, because you are not allowed to pull your phone out in the polls, but you can walk outside and right outside the polling, call them and say, hey, they can't find me, I don't know why. And you can talk, they'll help you talk through your issues. Okay, I already talked about that we are fans of, that we have vote centers. Always look up your polling locations. Voting in person, I tend to vote in the rain. During the March primary, I voted in the ice storm. I like to vote in bad weather. That I just know there will be no line. But you can come up with your own strategy for voting on these May elections. There's not going to be much of a line, but when you get to November election, there'll probably be a line. Okay, so I'm always making a plug for people becoming a poll worker. There's been shortages of trying to get employees in all kinds of ways after the pandemic, and Dallas County does need poll workers. They are, increasing the hourly rate so you can make more. I've done it. It's I always enjoy it. I have a location, the polling location that I typically work at. Everybody tries to have fun. It is, it's a lot of work. You can either work early voting or you can work election day. If you go into for example, the Dallas County website, there's a section where you can fill out a form and say, yes, I would like to be a poll worker, and then they will call you back. So, and then if you happen to speak Spanish, they have a very big need for bilingual judges, and the bilingual judges get paid more. So I highly recommend that if you can do that. Yeah, there's some of the training. If you've already been an election clerk, you can actually now, there's an ability to be able to train online without a big, long training day, but there is some training requirements for becoming a poll worker. Let's see. Okay, so then getting involved, I always am, we always would love more help at the League of Women Voters of Dallas, and anybody that's interested in coming to help us. We register voters, we pass out voter information flyers, we explain voting. We help people look up whether they're registered to vote. We help people look up their sample ballot. We try to have people get to know, who are their representatives. And so if you happen to be, if you can be positive about voting on social media, that we think that is an important thing. And then we're the League of Women Voters of Dallas, and that's our phone number. You can find answers on our website about all kinds of voting topics. You also can always call that phone number. The way our phone number works is you leave a message and it gets forwarded to the email of a bunch of us who are on the board of directors. And so I, for example, periodically get an email that's got a little phone message in it, and I listen, I can hear the whole phone message. And I call people back and say, people call and say, I can't read my vote by mail application. Can you help me? And so I will call them back. So I don't know how, I thought I had a vote by mail slide, but I don't see it in there. So I'll talk a little bit about that right now without my slides. The vote by mail app process has gotten a little more complicated because the application for vote by mail now requires you to put in ID numbers. It asks for one, but we recommend putting in two. The Texas Secretary of State has recently told people, yes, go ahead and put in both ID numbers that it asks for. So it's going to ask for something like your driver's license and a social, and we recommend you put both in. So the vote by mail application, if you can put in both ID numbers, we highly recommend that. And then when the vote by mail ballot gets mailed to you, it also asks for ID numbers. And we recommend you put both ID numbers on that. It's actually, when you do a vote by mail ballot, you put it in an inner envelope, the ballot, and then there's an outer envelope. And the outer envelope is called the carrier envelope, and the carrier envelope now has a spot for the voter ID numbers right under the flap. And some people, about 10% of, in the last election, Texas, Dallas County voters did not put their IDs correctly on that carrier envelope, and their vote did not get counted. So it's important to know that on that carrier envelope that you put the ID numbers right on there. And so there's always, right now, voting by mail has gotten a little bit more difficult. The application is difficult to read. The Texas legislature created a law. We are not fans of this law, where the Texas elections is not able to send out those applications to voters without being specifically asked for it by the voter. They can't just say, we know who's over 65 and typically votes by mail, and just send everyone applications. They can't do that right now. And so it created some problems in the March primary, because organizations are allowed to send out these vote by mail applications, but the organizations in many cases sent out an old application. They didn't send out the right one. If the county had actually been sending out the applications, they would have sent out the correct one. So it created some confusion. But we'll see. I think there's a learning curve there, that people now know what the correct application is. I think people are learning that they need to put the ID numbers on the application. They also need to put the ID numbers on that carrier envelope when they send their ballot back. So I'm hopeful that in November and in this May election, that we won't be at 10% of almost 11% of vote by mail ballots that are not counted. Let's see. Are there any questions out there?
I don't see any there in the chat. Would someone like to unmute and ask a question of Barbara?
Trying to think if there's anything that I didn't cover. I tried to get to most of it, but sometimes I forget a few topics.
Okay, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
What process do they go through to make all these changes to the districts? What prompts it?
Somebody said that they're having trouble unmuting. One of the Christina Payne says she can't unmute. So maybe someone needs to set it up so everyone can unmute.
Okay, maybe on our end we can fix that.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay, so redistricting, that's a good topic. So the redistricting process is different depending on the group that's doing the redistricting. So for example, in Texas, US congressional districts and the state Senate and state House districts, that is all done by the Texas legislature. So they did redistricting in last year. There was a group in the Texas legislature that did the redistricting and passed it through committee, and it passed. In local places, for example, the county commissioners in Dallas, they had their own process for redistricting. So did DISD. So they did their DISD did their own redistricting themselves. The county commissioners did a process where they redistricted themselves. I'm actually involved in the city of Dallas redistricting. They're still working on it. Those city of Dallas council races don't happen until next year. So the redistricting is happening right now and should be done in another month or two. So it depends. Redistricting has been rolling out kind of slowly over this last year. But in the kind of federal and the state level, most of that's already been done. So if you go look up who was your congressperson, that's already been done. You've already been redistricted. The same in your Texas Senate and Texas House races, that has already been completed. So if you were to go look up, who are my representatives, that should be the new information.
Hi, this is Christina. I did get in.
Good.
So thank you. This may be too complicated for this discussion, but my husband just got a Texas ID, which replaced his driver's license.
Mhm.
When we tried to get his voter stuff, he was rejected, even though we gave both the social and the voter. I mean, and all the information we could. So now I can't tell what is going to work for him. Is it we can still give the social, but we tried to get it fixed so his Texas ID, not his driver's license number, would be correct.
I think you might want to have him re-register with his Texas ID.
Oh, so just do the whole thing?
I would do the whole thing again. That would be my first thought. Okay, we've heard of this problem, I think. Okay, so were you trying to get a vote by mail ballot?
Yes.
Okay, we've heard of this problem. That in the right now in the voter system, what I think is happening is that your husband's old driver's license number is still the number they have in the system. So he's now doesn't have his old driver's license number, right? Unless he might have a picture of it.
Yes,
he could probably do the whole thing under his driver's license number because that's what they have in their system. We've asked them about that and they said, yes, we still have everyone's old driver's license number. And we realize there's an issue because some people got rid of their driver's license and don't have the number anymore. But if he's got the number, he could use that. The other option is that I think this works. He re-registers with his Texas ID, and then that's more the official number in the system.
Okay, would it be confusing to them to put all three numbers on there?
I don't think they have a spot for all three because it would be perfect if they would just let you put all three.
Right, but
They only have 2 blanks.
Yeah, but I just wrote it in on a nearby.
I think that might work. The people at elections, this is a law that came down to them from the state legislature. The people that working elections are just trying to find out that he's him. And so I think they would be fine with the three different ID numbers.
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, I've actually heard that you're about the third or fourth person I've heard that question from. So it's definitely an issue. Anybody else out there?
Well, while we're waiting on people to think of their questions, let's hear a word from Diane.
Sure.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for showing up today. And thank you, Barbara, for great presentation. I'm simply want to say thank you for being interested and serious about and being proactive about your voting registration and your ability to vote. One of the things that I don't always assume, that doesn't make grammatic sense. I typically assume, because I'm talking to league people, that we're all voting nerds. but there are people who have never voted. In fact, there are a lot of people who've never voted. And so one of the things that I want to make a plug for on these May elections is that this is a perfect time to try it out and see what it's like. Because there won't be long lines, because there's going to be very low turnout. So you can confound the experts by showing up and actually voting and learning, getting a firsthand look at what it looks like, so that the next time a big election comes, you can actually get in there and go with it. Bring your children and your grandkids. We want people to feel comfortable about going to the vote center and seeing what all is going on. My grandkids are fascinated by this process. And I know them. It's not just because Dee Dee's taking them, right? So this is great. This is great. Let me see. There are Texas is at the very bottom of the list of states for ease of voting. In other words, let's say it's on the top of the list for difficulty of voting. And this is a design flaw in our process based on lack of really good, in my opinion, good information about what's going on. So we're here to assure you that Dallas County Elections Department is doing an awesome job, and that our votes are safe and secure, and that if there are problems, it has to do with things like staffing issues and stuff like that. It doesn't have to do with the validity of the vote process itself. So voting can seem really intimidating because there's a lot of detail to make it work fully properly, but essentially you are selecting an elected person for a particular job. And once they're installed, they are your representative, or whether you voted for them or not. And they are there, and they will not know what you would like for them to do unless you speak out and let them know. It's not, they can't read your minds. So reach out to whoever your elected official is and let them know how you feel about whatever you see in the paper, on TV, on social media, or on your street. Let them know. We have a great tool on our website called Your Elected Official. And if you go to our voting pages, right now it's at the very bottom, but it will move back up, I suppose, once these elections are over. And it has the contact information for each one based on whatever their role is. Another thing I wanted to say about vote workers is the bilingual thing. We need to also invite anyone who is interested in elections and speaks Vietnamese to please, please, please show up as a poll worker, because the county, for the first time with the March election, needed to translate the ballots into Vietnamese, because we now have more than 5% of our population is Vietnamese. It's news to us, but we're working on it, and we're going to try and get our November voter guide translated into Vietnamese as well. And so I'm excited about getting connected with the Vietnamese community, and we want to make a plug for those faithful and not always new citizens. Some of them are second, third generation. And so they are an important part of our community. I think that's about it for me.
Thank you, Diane. Just so when she says our website, she's talking about the League of Women Voters of Dallas, and which is what one of the websites I showed you earlier That website is lwvdallas.org. And so that's
Thank
where
you.
another place you can look up your elected officials. We have, that's a place you can look up all kinds of things. So, okay.
Great. So is there anything else, Kathy?
Yes, we do have one question that says, do you have to be a citizen to help if you speak Vietnamese?
I think you do to work at the polls. There are ways that a non-citizen that speaks Vietnamese could help us, because we are working to translate everything also, all the voter information. So we could use help from a non-citizen who spoke Vietnamese. To actually work at the polling location, you have to be a registered voter in Dallas County. So you'd have to be a citizen, right?
Good to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
I only have one question, personal. Why did they do away with the straight ticket?
We don't know exactly why they did that. I'm not positive, because for a portion of the voting public, that just was much simpler. For people that are feel like they are part of one of the parties, there's a whole swath of people that don't feel that way, but there's a pretty big swath that feels like they care about the party and they're going to vote for the people in that party. And those people, feel like this is harder for them. And I don't exactly know why they did that. Because it does, it slows you down, definitely, no question, for the people that used to just hit that and then go shopping for groceries. Yeah, straight ticket voting, for anyone that doesn't know, straight ticket voting means you could, in a partisan election, you could go through and just click either on a Democrats or on the Republicans, and you were good, that all the partisan roles would be clicked. So, yeah, I don't know. We can't really answer questions about why the legislature does things. That might be a little much.
I don't get the Dallas Morning News, but what happened to the 4 counties in the state of Texas that had the recount? Do you know the results of those by chance?
My understanding, that was the audit is my
Mhm.
understanding, right?
Mhm.
My understanding, at least in Dallas County, was the audit came back all, they basically went through and did they already do audits, by the way, on elections. They already go through and do these sort of checks and balances. I mean, I could talk just a little bit about that, is that there are these checks and balances in the system already, quite a lot of checks and balances in terms of how they calculate the votes. And I think some of them are in places where people don't know that's where they are. So for example, the voter registration system in and of itself is a check and balance in the system. So for example, if you apply for a vote by mail ballot or apply, and you want to vote by mail ballot, when they have checked, when your application comes in, they check, one, to make sure you are a registered voter, you are in the voter registration system. And then when they plan to send you a ballot, they sort of check you off the list. The same thing with the ballot. If you send in 10 applications for a vote by mail ballot, they wouldn't just send you 10 ballots.
Mhm.
They know that they check you off the list. The same thing for the ballot. Once they've sent you a vote by mail ballot, they check you off the list. You can't come in and vote in person. When we used to work elections, when the screen changes colors, if you have got a vote by mail ballot outstanding and you walk into the polls and say, I'd like to vote, my whole screen turns a different color, and I go, I'm sorry, but you have a vote by mail ballot outstanding. You cannot just walk in and vote. So there are all these checks and balances in the system. Some people feel uncomfortable with the drop boxes of turning in a vote by mail ballot. And I've never quite understood that, because, when your ballot, when you get mailed a ballot, they go, okay, we know this person has been mailed a ballot. And when you turn in a ballot, they know you've turned in a ballot. That is part of the whole system. So if you turned in 10 ballots, it doesn't matter where you turned them in, they know you already turned in a ballot. They're not going to count the other 9 ballots. They, so it's hard for me to understand some of the things like, how you drop your vote by mail ballot off is completely irrelevant to the checks and balances in the system, So like, it was a really great thing during the pandemic that people could drop their vote by mail ballot off at the county during the entire early voting system. That just made everyone's life easier. They knew they could drive up and drop off their vote by mail ballot. That didn't have anything to do with the checks and balances in the voter system, but they've decided to make it a little harder. So the only time that you can drop off a vote by mail ballot is election day. Why? I don't know why. But anyways, so there are things like that. These checks and balances in their system seem to be in different places than the public knows about.
So I wanted to pipe up that if you have a ballot by mail and you wish to go vote in person, take your ballot by mail and all of the stuff that came with it to the polling location and turn it in. They have a process for taking you off of one list and putting you on another. It only takes like 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're able to vote in person. Just wanted to make sure that people understood, based on how Barbara was describing it, that
Right.
You're not lost. You can still vote.
That's true.
Thanks.
That's true. I should have mentioned that you can do that.
All right, well, we're almost at the end of our time. I'd like to thank Barbara and Diane for presenting today and answering our questions and giving us as much information as they can give us legally about the voting process and the difference between the 2 votes in May. So that helped a lot as well. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate those that came in today. And we hope that you have learned quite a lot and that you pass along that people need to go and vote.
Mhm.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.